I feel like a detective. It's like we get a project and we have to find out what's really going on, because as consultants, I think our job is to make sure we're solving the right problem. And people come to us, like for the last 20 years, we get phone calls from companies saying, hey, can you teach my people how to address concerns and close? But when we dig in and go and see the sales process, we find that's not actually the problem. It's how they open a sales call is much more important than how they close it. A lot of it, we're going back to planning and building rapport and discovery questions, and making sure it's consultative rather than just transactional. If that makes sense. So my role is to find out what's really going on, ask the right questions, and understand, make sure we solve the right problem.
Beautiful. In the coaching and consulting world, everyone talks about success, but few talk about what it really takes to get there. I'm Kevan Hollie, and this is Coaches Unplugged, where we pull back the curtain and have honest conversations with the people shaping the industry. In each episode, you'll hear how top coaches and consultants built their businesses, faced their challenges, and continue to grow, both in impact and in mindset. No fluff, no pretense, just real stories, real lessons, and real talk about what it takes to build something that lasts. Today's guest is Stuart Chant. He's the Senior Vice President of Training and Coaching at Outsell Consulting. For more than 20 years, Stuart has helped sales teams hit their numbers, grow accounts, and close the gap between average reps and top performers. He's worked with organizations like Google, Facebook, Comcast, AT&T, and MetLife, helping hundreds of teams move from inconsistent selling to confident, consultative conversations that drive results. Stuart's approach is hands-on, practical, and proven, built around live coaching, real calls, and skill practice that sticks. Today, we'll talk about what separates top sales performers from everyone else, why traditional training often fails, and how leaders can use technology to sell with more confidence, curiosity, and consistency. Thank you for joining us once again, Stuart. Please go ahead and say hello. And if you want to start off by just sharing a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture at Outsell Consulting.
My role is, it's really, I feel like a detective. I don't know. It's like we get a project and we have to find out what's really going on, because as consultants, I think our job is to make sure we're solving the right problem. That's it. And people come to us, like for the last 20 years, we get phone calls from companies saying, hey, can you teach my people how to address concerns and close? We're like, They always ask for that. But when we dig in and go and see the sales process, we find that's not actually the problem. It's how they open a sales call is much more important than how they close it. A lot of it, we're going back to planning and building rapport and discovery questions, and making sure it's consultative rather than just transactional. If that makes sense. So my role is to find out what's really going on, ask the right questions, and understand, make sure we solve the right problem.
So being the vice president, what does a typical day look like for Stuart Chant?
Yeah, so like the rest of us, it's mainly a lot of meetings, back-to-back meetings with clients, moving projects along, doing different things in projects, maybe leading a virtual training session with a group, and then straight onto another virtual training session with someone else, and then onto a pitch or presentation, into recap meetings and monthly one-on-ones. And then when I'm lucky, probably about 10 days a month, I'm leading workshops with real customers, 15 to 30 people in a room in a very, very interactive setting. What I found, Kevin, is people don't like sitting around being talked to. They hate it. They'd rather do anything else. So our goal is to get people on their feet within 2 minutes doing something. So, that's my favorite day. Last week I had Actually, 150 people at a university up on their feet within 2 minutes, all leading conversations with each other and practicing different questions. When you get things like that, it's just fascinating. They're the best days.
And that's awesome. That's awesome. So it sounds like you're very busy, right? Staying plugged into what's going on around you and driving impact.
Yeah, we are. I think it is. And it's about learning as we go. Obviously, I think COVID changed our business. COVID changed a lot of stuff because all of a sudden we all had to work virtually, right? That was you couldn't get a face-to-face meeting for the life of it. So all of a sudden you had to be very, very good virtually. And how do you do that? How do you become as good, when you're only this size, only 4 or 5 inches on the screen compared to what you were in person? So learning how to do virtual meetings and make them interactive. Because again, people don't like sitting around listening.
That's a very interesting point. COVID definitely did change a lot, especially with technology. For at least a couple of years, most companies resorted to virtual Zoom sessions and video recording, right? Inhibiting that face-to-face human contact. So we had to get used to using our tools to remain connected.
Yeah. And it seemed like such a disadvantage at the time. You're like, well, I'm not in person. It's just not me. Turns out for a coach, it's such an advantage because now I can get to see thousands of presentations I couldn't possibly have seen before. So companies send us their presentations and they've all got them. They've all got virtual meetings that they've got and they send them over and they say, what do you think? What's going on? What's happening? And we can see what's actually happening. Well, I remember once someone told me they thought the Queen of England must have thought the world smelled of fresh paint. It's a lovely idea because everywhere the Queen of England used to go, it was freshly painted. It was swept up. She never knew what the real world was like. And as a consultant, I feel like that. Or as a coach, I feel like that. Like I could ask a question of someone and they'll give me the answer they think I want to hear. But that's not what you want as a coach, right? You want the truth. And the easiest way to get to the truth is to see someone in action under pressure in a real meeting. That's the only way to growth. So now we get sent all of these meetings and we get to see them and you can actually see what someone does. Have they planned for it? Do they set an agenda? Do they ask good questions? And of course, the answer to that's probably no, right? The little kid in The Sixth Sense, he used to say, he saw dead people. I hear bad questions, right? There's so many salespeople out there asking bad questions and get bad answers, surface level, and they're not solving the right problem as a result of it.
Very, very insightful, which sparks my curiosity. If you want to tell our listeners a story or just a bit of how you got involved and how you began in this industry, what does your history look like as far as getting started in the coaching space?
Yeah, I've always been a salesperson, and I gradually, as a salesperson, I rose up. I ended up being SVP of a New York Stock Exchange public company, and had a lot of salespeople working for me, running a large part of the country. And I hired Outsell Consulting to come and fix my sales teams back in 2005. I hired them, and it was amazing. I think the year before, we always say we had a negative profit. I think we, in a polite word, we lost $4 million. So we got really worried. We were like, oh my God. And I noticed every time I went out with a seller, they were all saying different things. They were all telling different stories. And so it was like we had 150 different sales processes, if you like, right? That's because everyone had their own sales process. And that seemed wrong. And we had the top 20% of guys people who were killing it. And so we just knew that if we could get everyone to do more of what the best people did, we would crack it. But we just didn't know how. Outsell came in and they rode along with us and they watched our best people in action. They watched some of our worst people in action, and they came to us and they said, here's what you do. Here's how you sell. Here's how you should sell. And they put a complete process together for us. And we taught that to everyone exhaustively over the next 18 months. And we ended up the following year making 38 million in profit. So it was a huge turnaround. And I remember thinking, I was 43 at the time. I'm now 63, as you could tell. I feel, I'm an old geezer now. But I remember thinking at the time, I was pretty smart. But Turns out when they showed up, I thought I was a buffoon. And I really wanted to be like these guys were like SWAT. They were like Green Berets, right? They really knew their stuff. So I ended up running away from corporate America and joining them. And I've absolutely loved it since, because I get to solve problems for companies and help them grow. It's great. Yeah, 20 years. 20 years of working with people. And I remember when I joined Outsell, I said, well, what if I get a client and they're just doing everything right? And the boss, Brian Lowry, said, well, if you do get that, let me know.
Absolutely. Speaking of problems, that leads into my next question. Let's talk about some of the pain points that are going on in the industry right now. I know you're someone who uses technology well to your advantage, but whether it be in technology or even outside of the technology world, can you just speak to what challenges you see coaches and consultants facing right now?
I force them to send me their top 3 intentions every day. And just helping them with that thinking makes it better. But of course, they're like the rest of us. They're bombarded with meetings. They've got to be in a million meetings. They can't get out of them. And they've got to go on ride-alongs and all the rest of it. But how do they actually get their work done? So I think we are starting to use technology to solve this problem. This morning, I was coaching someone, and I just said to him, give me all of the projects and the tasks that are floating around your head. And I was recording. I had Otter.ai was up. So I said, I'm recording it. So just speak for 5 minutes and just give me all of your projects. Give me everything that's in your head. Work, home life, whatever. Just give me everything. And she started talking, and she spoke for 8 minutes nonstop. This is about she's a big operator in the insurance business. It was a lot of projects. She nonstop, 8 minutes. And I said, okay, well, what about tasks? You have to get your hair done. You have to book a flight. You have to do this. What else have you got to do? And she spoke for another 3 minutes on tasks. And I said, well, I sent her the recap of the meeting. And I said, the great thing about AI is it will organize it. You can then pick the top 3 projects you've got, and then let's talk about how you're actually going to do them. How are you going to get them? What does done look like? What does doing look like? We do a lot of work with Mike Williams from Doing to Done, and which is a fabulous book. If anyone's not read it, he used to run David Allen's company, Getting Things Done. So he's a real expert on projects. So we're helping our clients with that kind of stuff, and AI is really helping organize that stuff.
You mentioned AI. Let me ask you this, Stuart. What's working well for you right now when it comes to AI in your personal, everyday business, as far as being able to drive those results? What's working well for you right now? Tell me something that's been frustrating.
I think what's working is we're now using technology. We created our own technology called Shine. And Shine, when we work with sellers, we can use Shine to prep before they go into a meeting. Imagine, so the salesperson is asked a question by Shine. It says to them, who are you going to meet with? What's the audience? What do they care about? What's the purpose of the meeting? What's your desired outcome? How are you going to know you knocked this out of the park? It asks them those kind of questions. What's on the agenda? What are you going to talk about? What does your purpose statement sound like? And what are you going to suggest? And what's your call to action? The AI can ask them questions ahead of time. And then when they come, obviously you can record the meeting using Otter or Shine. And then after the meeting, the AI says to them, how did the meeting go? Who'd you meet with? What happened? What's on your to-do list as a result of it? What notes should go into the CRM? So it helps salespeople really do recaps a lot faster, which can differentiate them from the rest of the salespeople out there. And it's just capturing a lot more of the knowledge that companies want. So that's working. The big frustration is we don't have enough of it out there at the moment. It's fairly new, obviously, this technology. So we're getting it into the hands of our best customers right now.
Very interesting. So you mentioned a tool called Shine. Is that something that you built personally?
Yeah, our company built. Outsell works with Behavior Delta, with David Go. And we created this. This was an idea we had as we rode along with salespeople. So we started to test it I was riding along with a company that sells to factories. And before we went into the place, I said to the salesperson about a year ago, I said, what's the purpose of the meeting? And I just recorded it into AI. And then when we came out of the meeting, I said, how did it go? What happened? And it gave the salesman the ability to do a recap within 5 minutes and differentiate himself. So it seemed to work. So yeah, we built it. We built it pre, post, and for the meeting itself. So really useful technology.
That's awesome. So I would imagine the growth has taken off since you've implemented this new system.
Yeah. It's getting there. There's so much to it, right? There's so much we can do with technology, with Otter and with ChatGPT and with Calendly and with Shine and with habit trackers. Another thing we work on is changing people's habits. So a habit tracker is really useful for starting a small behavior change. And obviously that's what we want as coaches.
So what's next for you? What's the next big thing?
I think it's just making sure we start small enough when we try and change people's behavior. I can't tell you, like I met with someone yesterday and they were just talking about a personal goal. They said, well, I want to run a half marathon. So, okay, that's a good goal. What do you currently do? And basically they've sat on the couch for 30 years. They've not done anything, but all of a sudden they want to run a half marathon. Well, you and I know that's pretty difficult, right? And with a lofty goal like that, you're probably going to be disappointed. So I reduced the goal to let's run half a mile. Let's get to the end of your street, right? Let's not go for half, because you're going to be really upset with yourself when you can't do it. So reduce the goal to a very, very small amount, half a mile, and then become the kind of person who runs half a mile. Because if you can become the kind of person who runs half a mile, you can become the kind of person who runs a mile. And so we take things down to the smallest level. Salesperson, if I find out during my coaching that a salesperson is not cold calling, and it's surprising how often I find it out, Kevin, I say, okay, let's do one cold call a day. Because if you can do one cold call, you can do two. And the bosses are always like, one? That's crazy. We got to have more than one. Right? They're doing none at the moment. Right? And so often people are saying, go and do 50 cold calls. And of course they can't, because they don't have the ability for it. And they're not ready for it. Yeah, our job is, baby steps. Us to work on ability, build confidence, and help people start to do that thing. But it starts with a very small goal.
Exactly. I think the key to what you just said there, Stuart, is consistency is important, because like you mentioned, you can do 20 cold calls tomorrow and then the next day do 0, or the next 7 days after that do very little, which won't give you real momentum. But if you focus on, just like you said, doing one per day, every single day, that compound effect will eventually take over and you'll build that momentum based off your consistency.
Yeah. What helps is the prompt. There's 3 things, right? If you've read BJ Fogg's book on habits, there's a book called Tiny Habits, if no one's read it. He just talks about, for a behavior to happen, 3 things have to come together: motivation, ability, and prompt. And all too often in sales, we lead with motivation. We'll give them a spiff. We'll do a contest. Lead with motivation. But if they haven't got the ability to do it, and if they're not prompted to do it, it's not going to happen. So a lot of this is about prompting the behavior. So BJ Fogg, during COVID, I was talking to BJ, and this is a big thing in his book. I said one of my goals was to do push-ups. I've always wanted to be the kind of person who did push-ups. I used to start, I'll do 100 push-ups a day. Well, after 2 weeks, that's too hard. And you stop, and then you're annoyed at yourself. So BJ said, just do 2 push-ups. And he gave me a prompt, which is very useful. After I wash my hands, do 2 push-ups. But during COVID, I started to do 2 push-ups, go to the bathroom, wash my hands, 2 push-ups. I started to do it. I became the kind of person who did that. And then now I do 75 every morning. But I could never have done 75 push-ups before that. Impossible. I would have given up after 2 or 3 weeks because that's what motivation does. So you need a prompt and you need the ability, if that makes sense.
That actually reminds me of another book that I read by, I believe the author was James Clear, called Atomic Habits. And he talks about something very similar, having a prompt or a trigger that is ingrained in your brain causes you to do a task when another event occurs. So, for example, like you said, every time you would wash your hands after COVID, you would do 2 push-ups. And you would do that every single time because it was ingrained in your brain, that trigger to do the push-ups after you wash your hands. And eventually that consistency has led to you now doing 75 every morning.
I found I wasn't drinking enough water. So I started to, after I hang up the dog leash in the morning, drink a pint of water. After I do my first stretch, drink a pint of water. After I have my first meeting, drink a pint of water. So yeah, and then I use a habit tracker to check those things off because I, like the rest of us, I love checking things off. Whether it's, I'm trying to learn Spanish, I'm trying to play piano, I'm doing all these things. But once I do an activity, I check it off every day. And it's tiny steps. But over the course of it, it makes a big difference. And we do the same thing with salespeople.
Exactly. So, Stuart, having this mindset so well into your career now, how do you translate and convey that to your team?
I think it's all about finding out what someone's goal is, right? We have to find out what their goal is and why that's their goal and find out if that really is their goal. And once we know what it is, we have to figure out how they're going to do it. So again, it's, what is for this project or this goal, what does done look like? When it's actually done, what does that look like for you? What does doing look like? How are you going to do it? What's the next step? So again, it's breaking things down and helping people organize their lives. I think that's one way how AI helps us so much. The fact you can just have someone garble 8 minutes of stuff or 11 minutes of stuff and organize that and let them look at it and review it and really attack it. And then give everyone daily goals of getting stuff done and checking in on. I think we all need someone to check in on us, right? That's so useful to have a supervisor or a manager that asks you that question.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Stuart, let's go back to AI. What trends do you see occurring over the next few years, particularly with AI in your industry?
And I think obviously we're going to have, everything's going to be transcribed. So AI will very easily be able to tell us how the transaction went, whether it's an inside seller, a telesales seller, an outside seller. It's going to know what the salesperson did right. It's going to be able to recognize bright spots. It's also going to recognize coaching opportunities. And it's going to help people coach. It's going to tell managers when to coach. Because the biggest issue we see at the moment is managers aren't coaching. Managers are too busy in meetings. It's amazing. 40 or 50% of the companies you work with, they say, oh, our manager's too busy to coach. Which is amazing when that's what they're hired to do, right? They're hired. A coach's job is to show continuous improvement of their team. Managers can choose what to do with their time. And it's amazing how many times they choose administration over sales management. Truly stunning to me. Like some managers say, I can't go and ride along with my salespeople. I'm way too busy here. But you can't run a sales team from behind a desk. So you need to get out there. And if you can't get out there, the next best thing is AI. You actually know what's happening in the meetings. So a lot of my work now is calibration with managers. We will watch a recording of, watch recordings of salespeople pitching. And then I'll have them get a blank piece of paper, put a line down the middle, put a plus sign on the left, minus sign on the right. And I'll say, capture everything they did well, because we're obviously trying to catch people doing things right. And then maybe catch one thing they could do differently next time. One thing. And then at the end of after we watch the meeting, I'll see if we agree. I'll say, what's the number one thing you want to coach this person on? And it's fascinating to see if you agree. Everyone should do this with their co-workers, their co-managers. Get together, watch a presentation, watch a meeting, and say, what's the one thing I would coach on? It's amazing how many times that's different. I don't know if it's my experience with this, but I think it's fascinating. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I think I'm learning with clients, which is fascinating. Every job is a learning experience for me. But I think it's a fascinating thing to do. Just see if you agree on what's the number one thing.
Definitely. I think that's very interesting that you say that because, especially now, we do see everything. We see how AI is literally changing every single industry out there right now. And honestly, I think there's two types of people right now. There's the person who is resistant to AI and adapting to it. And then there's the other person who realizes that it's changing the world before our very eyes. And it's better to get in front of the trend before it becomes massively utilized.
I think there's a lot to it. I mean, AI is obviously a gift. It's fantastic. Everyone should use it, but everyone should know that it's only going to take you 60% of the way there. Like for a start to use AI properly, you have to know your job, right? You have to know what prompt to give it to get the right result. If you don't know that, it's not going to be great. And then even when you give it the right prompt, it gives you back a work product, but in my experience, it's only 60, 70% of the way there, and you have to change it. I have to change stuff 3 or 4 times, make suggestions, take things out. If you just went with what it gave you, I think the results would not be great. I think you've got to check it big time. It's not,
Absolutely.
it's smart, but it's not that smart. They still need people. I'll tell you a quick story. I was trying to close a deal with a very large trucking company, and they asked for a case study, and it was a kind of a sister company. It was owned by the same private equity company. So they kind of knew each other. They knew this other business and they knew would work for them. So they said, "Oh, please give me a case study of that company." I didn't have a case study at the time. Our writer had not done it and not finished it yet. So I said, "Oh yeah, I'll send it over to you." So I knocked it up in AI, gave it all the numbers, said what work we'd done over the previous year. And I added to it and I made it nice. And AI did a pretty good job of this case study. It was pretty good. And I sent it over to the company and we got the deal. So it was a happy ending. But then I gave it to our writer and I said, "Hey, here's this case study. I just knocked it up. I did it in AI and I sent it over. I got it to him in like an hour or so." I said, "But could you take a look?" And Elizabeth, asked a lot of questions and really went through the project with me again, found out who all the best players are, looked at the results, and she wrote a case study. And it was phenomenal compared to AI. The difference was truly stunning. You could see this was a professional writer who really knew their stuff, and it was a world of difference. It taught us a very valuable lesson. AI is good, but it's not that good.
For sure, for sure. That human element is definitely critical. Stuart, let me ask you this. Where do you see Outsell Consulting going in the next 6 to 12 months?
Maybe more projects. I mean, we're always running 5 or 6 projects at the same time. We've done that for years. If there's any way we could run 10 or 12 projects and get our word to more people, that would be great. So maybe it's about expanding our team and bringing in people who are like-minded. So I think some expansion, probably doing some outreach, more appointments, more prospecting, because we've lived on referrals for years. I think what the work we do is powerful. It's really useful, and it makes a difference. We become like part of the team when we work with someone. We'll be with them very closely for 6 months to a year to even 10 or 12, 15 years. We'll just be with the client. We'll know them really, really well. More of that, more connection, more bringing companies in. I think that's the future for us, just expanding slightly. And I think AI can help us do that as well. I think it can just do some of the heavy lifting that we can't do. And now I think AI knows us pretty well. So it knows how we work, what we're looking for. Like when I do discovery now, I film everything, I record everything, I share it with my team. So they've got every recording. So we didn't used to be able to do that. So AI can really help us get to know companies very quickly. Our writers can customize sales playbooks very quickly. So we can be in a classroom in 3 weeks teaching. If someone, most of the time it'll be a transactional sales team that they want to become consultative. That's our bread and butter, I'd say, whether it's in construction, insurance, financial services, whatever the business, we can move very, very quickly. So I think more of that technology to get us there quicker.
Wow, you mentioned a few things there. You talk about expansion and mentioned getting in front of more people. My question to that would be this. If you had a magic wand, Stuart, right? What would be just one thing you'd fix in your business right now that may be either holding you back or maybe slowing things down a bit? What's one thing that you would fix if you could do it tonight?
I think it's more at bats. I do have a magic wand, but it's more at bats. It's, just getting the word out to people. So I think we've been quietly working in the background for 20 years. We're not an overnight success. People don't know about us. So I think getting the word out, sharing our case studies, and just getting in front of more people, more opportunities. But of course, we do what every consultant does. We get referred in. We nearly only work with private equity these days. So a private equity company phones us and says, "Hey, I've got a company here. They need help with their sales training. Please go and see them." And we end up working on a lot of stuff, whether it's strategy, whether it's sales training, whether it's, coaching managers, and they're always with a sales team. But yeah, we get referred in and then we get our heads down, we go to work, we run 5 or 6 projects at a time. And then we look up and we go, "Oh, we need some more work." It's hopefully that time comes around Christmas. You look up and you go, "Oh, okay, I better make some phone calls. I better go and have lunch with some people." And I think every single person I know does the same thing. They're just busy doing their work rather than getting ahead, rather than keeping that consistent flow.
Exactly. That makes sense, which I think is a challenge for a lot of companies now, especially in this day and age of social media and quick fixes and instant gratification. It's important to make sure that you have something great, and it's important to make sure that people know you have something great. And that's the goal and the challenge for a lot of coaching companies and consulting companies right now. So I think that's very, very well stated. Stuart, only because we are running towards the end of our show here today, I do want to get to a couple more questions and we can kind of bring everything together. For those of our listeners who may be newer to the coaching industry, or perhaps they've even been in the industry for a while, but they're struggling with something in particular that you've been able to overcome in your own career, what advice would you give?
Such a good question. Oh my God, that's like the never-ending question, Kevin. That's such a good question. I think that the biggest thing that comes with age, someone once told me that with age, mirrors turn to windows. That means that when we're younger, we're always constantly looking in the mirror and making it all about ourselves. But as we grow up, we can see other people. And so I think the biggest thing for managers or anyone coaching is to move from telling to asking, because there's nothing more powerful than self-coaching. Think about it. Like in my experience, if I think something's a good idea, I nearly always do it. And then later on, I may regret it. But I never disagree with it. I always think it's a good idea. But if someone else tells me, I don't do it. If my parents, when they used to tell me what to do, I hated it. I never did it. When managers told me what to do, I'm not doing that. I want to do what I want to do. And everyone's the same. So I think the job of a coach is to ask questions and to help people self-coach, self-discover. And that's really hard because you've got to put your ego on and you have to truly listen to what people are saying. You're like you, Kevin, you're a very good listener. You recap, you ask good, relevant questions. And so many people aren't listening, so they just ask the next question they think of. It's not connected. But you're obviously a master of this stuff. You're asking the right questions. That's a coach's job.
Thank you for that, Stuart. Greatly appreciate that. And I think all of our listeners will gain a lot of value from everything that you've shared today, even from how you've got started in the industry many years ago to your own use of AI software called Shine, which sounds very interesting. I think a lot of people will find value with that. And with that, I want to thank you again for sharing everything today. And also, I would like to thank our listeners for being here and for being a part of a conversation that's redefining what it means to grow, lead, and create impact. If today's episode resonated, please share it, follow along, and keep the energy moving forward. Because the future of coaching and consulting isn't written by chance, it's written by those willing to evolve. I'm Kevan Hollie, and until next time, keep building something extraordinary.